Welcome to part 1 of Chapter 10 video presentation. Chapter 10 is devoted to methodologies for purchased software packages. In other words, Chapter 10 addresses the following question. If you as a company or as an organization choose to purchase off-the-shelf software as opposed to developing it internally, what are the steps that you as an organization need to go through? What are some of the issues or best practices that you need to keep in mind when purchasing software packages? So this is the main topic and the main goal of Chapter 1, to address this question in relation to purchased software packages. In large companies today, application software is typically both custom developed and purchased. I would say that the balance, even in large companies, is shifting towards purchased software. Why is that? Well, because purchasing software has a number of benefits. It's much faster to implement a software when you buy it. In other words, you don't have to wait to design, construct, and implement the software. You just buy it and then you implement it, right? Also, you don't need to go through all those development stages that are part of SDLC, of the classical SDLC framework. So all this results cost savings. But of course, making the software internally, and large companies typically have the resources to do that. They have the labor, they have the technologies to develop software internally. Of course, if you do it like that, if you develop it internally, then you can develop a software application that has better fit for your company needs. But again, the time and cost savings, they seem to outweigh this customization feature, especially given the fact that a lot of off-the-shelf software nowadays can be customized as well. But in small businesses, software is typically purchased, and the answer for this is simple. Small businesses, they don't have the resources, most importantly, the IT labor necessary for developing their own software applications. So that's why small businesses, small organizations, they typically choose the purchasing options. But of course, purchasing software has certain advantages and disadvantages. It's not just saving time and money. Some main advantages of purchasing software applications, or purchasing, as they call it, off-the-shelf software from a software vendor, are as follows. Reduced time to implement. Obviously, it's much faster to buy something that is already made as opposed to developing it internally. You have lower overall acquisition cost. It's cheaper. So not only you save time, you also save money. As you probably know, software, just like any kind of digital asset, has this feature of infinite scalability. What it means it takes time and money to develop a particular software, but making copies of that software doesn't cost much. Also, you have reduced need for internal IS resources. If all of your software is purchased, then you don't need to develop it. And if you don't need to develop it, you don't need to have all this development IT labor on your payroll. Also, you are more likely to get high application quality, especially as a small business. You don't have that kind of expertise, that kind of access to talent, and also that kind of resources to really debug your software, make sure it doesn't have any errors, and also embed all the latest industry practices into the software. Large software vendors such as Microsoft, Oracle, they do have those capabilities. They do have those resources to develop high quality applications. And also sometimes it's beneficial to buy a software package, because if you think about any software application, it is really a collection of various processes. Now those processes embedded into a software application, they are based on certain business practices. So when you're buying off-the-shelf software, not only you're buying the software, meaning the technology, you're also buying those processes or best practices. So you as a company, you quickly acquire best practices as well. I think this seems to be especially relevant in companies that operate in developing economies. So they need to catch up with more developed countries. So what they do, they just buy packaged software. Not only they streamline their internal operations, they're also acquiring the latest expertise, the latest thinking in business in relation to their organization, their particular industry. Of course, in addition to advantages of purchasing software, there are certain disadvantages. First of all, you have risk due to lack of package knowledge. So in other words, you'll be buying something that you're not familiar with, and no matter how much time you spend, your understanding of a particular software package will be limited, and sometimes it's only after you install it when you start gaining the true knowledge as to how it works and what kind of deficiencies it has. I remember in my former organization, we also had those experiences. I was based in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and we evaluate all those vendors. Typically, a lot of those vendors, they came from North America or Europe. It all seems fine. We buy the software, and then we realize there's like one little thing that is just not working for our organization, and this one little thing makes it very difficult for us to continue to use this software application. Something along the lines of zip codes, right? Like a lot of applications, software applications built in North America, they require zip code. We didn't have that zip code. So something minor, even minor like that, can create some serious issues. Also, risk due to extent of organizational changes required. As I mentioned before, any software also carries a number of business practices that you will be adopting as an organization by the virtue of installing that software. And sometimes the redesign of existing business practices because of software implementation is so radical that it creates so much disruption for this company, and it becomes just so costly, so lengthy, and so disruptive to implement a particular off-the-shelf software package. In fact, there are some cases of companies going bankrupt when they try to implement an existing ERP package because it just requires so much change. A lot of companies simply cannot handle that. And then you have initial and ongoing dependence on vendor. When you're buying off-the-shelf application, you're betting that support for this application will be available at least for the next few years. But of course, there is no such guarantee in the world of business. The software vendor from which you're buying your package may go out of business. If it doesn't go out of business, it may redesign its application, and it may not offer support to this older version of that application that you have. It may change its terms of user support, something that becomes very costly for you, and you will not be able to continue with this vendor. So you're really investing in not only into a particular piece of software, you're also investing into the relationship with your vendor. So you need to have a lot of confidence in your software vendor to make this purchasing decision a good one in the long run. Purchasing software is typically initiated by developing high-level cost estimates with business managers and also employees of the IS department. Those high-level cost estimates are done to see whether purchasing a system really makes sense from a financial standpoint. So here you have a hypothetical layout where the cost of building a system is obviously higher, is much higher than the cost of buying a particular system. And most of those savings when it comes to buying a system, they come from the construction phase. In other words, you're not going to construct much. You will spend a lot of time implementing it, but when it comes to building components, this is where you have time and cost savings. So giving this kind of breakdown, you may decide to go ahead and purchase a particular software application as opposed to building it internally. And if you decide to build it internally, you'll have to go through certain steps, and we'll cover those steps in part 2 of chapter 10.